Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be exploring artificial intelligence for social good,
Oh, very interesting.
specifically in justice systems.
Oh, yeah?
We've got this source material called Artificial Intelligence for Social Good Principles.
I see.
And honestly, I'm pretty curious to see if AI can really live up to this promise of justice without borders.
Yeah, what do you think?
I mean, it's a powerful idea.
It is this vision of a world where justice is truly accessible to every single person.
Right, but can AI really deliver on that?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? I
Yeah,
think to figure that out, we really need to understand both the potential and the pitfalls.
for sure.
You know?
Absolutely. And this document kind of lays out a framework
Okay.
for how AI can be used to benefit society.
Uh-huh.
But it also seems to kind of hint at some of the challenges involved.
Yeah, for sure.
So what are your initial thoughts on all this?
Well, one thing that really stands out to me is this whole idea of AI as a double-edged sword. It's got this potential, right, to address some of those systemic inequalities in our justice systems.
Right.
But it also has this risk of making those inequalities worse if we're not super careful.
Yeah, if we don't design and implement these systems responsibly.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is definitely a complex issue.
It is.
So where do we even begin with all of this?
Well,
The document mentions these four key principles: equity and inclusion,
right.
accountability and explainability,
Yep.
human centricity,
Uh-huh.
and then global collaboration.
Yeah, those are important.
So how do all of these principles actually play into this whole justice without borders idea?
Well, I think those principles are absolutely central to this whole discussion. Let's take equity and inclusion as an example.
Okay.
A justice system can't really be just if it doesn't actually serve everyone equally, right?
Right.
Regardless of their background or their circumstances.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where AI can potentially make a big difference,
Yeah.
you know? Just imagine AI-powered tools that can provide legal assistance in hundreds of languages,
Wow, yeah.
making legal services accessible to communities that have been historically marginalized or just totally excluded.
That would be incredible.
Right.
It's like taking those justice without borders aspirations and making them a reality.
Exactly.
But isn't there a risk that these AI systems could actually perpetuate existing biases?
Oh, for sure.
I've heard some concerns about algorithms being used in criminal sentencing
Uh-huh.
that end up discriminating against certain groups.
Yeah, you're right to raise that concern.
Okay.
That's exactly where the principle of accountability and explainability comes into play.
Okay.
If we're going to be using AI in these high-stakes situations, we need to be able to actually understand how they are making decisions.
So we need to be able to hold them accountable.
Yes, exactly. We
Okay.
can't just blindly trust these algorithms. We need what's called glass box AI,
Okay,
where that decision-making process is totally transparent and open to scrutiny.
so instead of relying on this mysterious black box,
Right.
we need to be able to look under the hood and see how the engine is actually working.
Exactly.
But how do we actually achieve that level of transparency?
Well, there are different techniques you can use to make AI more explainable.
Okay.
For example, instead of relying on these deep learning models, which can be really opaque,
Mm-hmm.
we can use, rule-based systems
Okay.
or decision trees
Okay.
where the logic behind each decision is super clearly laid out.
Right, so it's not just about building systems that work.
Right.
It's about building systems that we can understand.
And trust.
Yeah, and trust, that's essential.
Especially when we're talking about something as fundamental as justice.
Absolutely. So we're not just talking about handing over the gavel to a robot judge.
No, not at all.
Okay.
The goal here is to use AI to sort of augment human judgment,
Okay.
to give judges and lawyers more information, better insights, so that they can make fairer and more informed decisions.
I can see how that'd be really valuable, especially in complex cases where
Yeah.
there's just so much data to go through.
Definitely.
But what about the potential for bias?
Yeah.
Even if humans are still making the final call,
Yeah.
couldn't those biased algorithms still influence their judgment?
Yeah, that's a totally valid concern, and it really just highlights the need for that careful design and testing of these AI systems, right?
Yeah.
We need to be constantly evaluating,
Right.
auditing these algorithms.
To ensure that they're not perpetuating or amplifying those existing biases.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to that principle of equity and inclusion.
Right.
It's not just about making sure the algorithms are unbiased,
Yes.
but that they are actually being used in a way that promotes fairness and justice for everyone.
100%, and that's precisely where the principle of global collaboration comes in.
Okay,
This isn't just a challenge for one country or one region to solve.
right.
We need to be working together on a global scale.
Yeah, to develop ethical guidelines and standards for how we use AI in these justice systems. I'm really starting to get a sense of just how interconnected all of these principles are.
Yeah, they all play together.
It's not enough to just focus on one or two. We need to be thinking about all of them simultaneously.
Yeah, if we want to create a truly just and equitable system.
Exactly. So we've talked about this whole idea of AI as a double-edged sword.
Uh-huh.
And we've explored those 4 key principles that can kind of help us navigate
Right.
this complex landscape.
Yeah.
But how do these principles actually play out in real-world situations?
Well, let's look at some examples.
Yeah, let's dive into some concrete examples of how AI is being used in justice systems today, both for good and maybe not so good.
Sounds good.
One area where AI is already making a big impact is in criminal sentencing.
Oh, yeah.
You've got algorithms like Compass
Uh-huh.
that are being used to try to predict
Right.
the likelihood of someone reoffending,
Yeah.
which judges can then consider, right, when making sentencing decisions.
Uh-huh.
But there's been a ton of debate
Yeah.
about whether these tools are actually fair and unbiased.
Yeah, Compass is a really, really interesting example
Okay.
of how AI can both promise this greater fairness, but also raise some serious concerns about bias.
Okay.
On the surface, right, using an algorithm to assess risk seems like it could make the system more objective.
Yeah.
Because human judges, I mean, we know
Right.
they can be susceptible to all sorts of biases, conscious and unconscious.
Right.
But here's the problem. These algorithms are often trained on data that reflects the existing biases in the criminal justice system.
So even if the algorithm itself is neutral,
Uh-huh.
the data it's fed can kind of bake in those biases,
Exactly.
leading to unfair outcomes.
Exactly.
So it's not enough to just create like a technically sophisticated algorithm.
Right.
You also have to be incredibly careful about the data that's used to train it.
You got it.
And even then,
Yeah.
predicting recidivism, that's inherently difficult, right?
It really is.
There's so many factors
so many.
that contribute to whether someone will reoffend,
Right.
a lot of which are impossible to really capture in a data set.
Yeah, and to rely on those predictions for something as consequential as sentencing, I mean,
Yeah.
it raises some really profound ethical questions.
It makes you wonder if we're maybe putting a little too much faith in these algorithms,
Yeah,
especially given that potential for error and bias.
definitely.
That's why this human-in-the-loop model
Yes,
is so important.
it is.
These tools can provide valuable insight,
They can.
but in the end, the final decision
Right.
really should rest with a human judge who can consider all of those nuances of the case.
You got it.
Speaking of nuances, let's maybe shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about access to justice.
Sure.
Huge issue globally, right?
It is.
Millions of people just lack access to even basic legal services.
Yeah, that's right.
So can AI actually help bridge that gap?
Absolutely. There are already these AI-powered platforms that are making legal information and assistance more accessible, especially for underserved communities.
Okay.
Just imagine chatbots that can answer those basic legal questions,
Right.
guide people through legal processes, maybe even help them draft simple legal documents.
Wow.
These tools can really empower individuals to navigate the legal system with more confidence
Right.
and understanding.
It's like having a virtual lawyer in your pocket.
Right.
That could be huge for people who can't afford traditional legal representation.
Absolutely. And it's not just about individuals either.
Okay.
AI can also help level the playing field for small businesses.
Uh-huh.
Imagine a contract analysis tool that can help a small business owner actually understand
Right.
the terms of a complex contract without having to hire expensive lawyers.
Okay.
That kind of access to legal expertise can make all the difference
It really
for a
comes.
struggling entrepreneur.
It seems like AI has this potential to democratize access to justice
Yeah, well,
in a way that just wasn't possible before.
I think so.
But are there downsides to these tools?
Well, one challenge is just making sure that these tools are designed in a way that's truly accessible
Right.
to everyone. For example, if a legal chatbot is only available in English,
Right.
it's not going to be very helpful to someone who speaks Spanish.
Yeah, or Mandarin.
Exactly.
Right.
We need to be prioritizing those AI tools that are multilingual
Yeah.
and culturally sensitive.
It's like we were saying earlier about equity and inclusion.
Uh-huh.
You can have the most advanced AI in the world,
Doesn't matter.
but if it's not actually accessible to everyone,
Right.
it's not really serving its purpose.
Exactly. And it's not just about language either.
Okay.
We also need to consider the digital divide.
Mm-hmm.
These tools are only effective if people actually have access to the technology.
And the internet.
Yeah, the internet connectivity, they need to actually use them.
So it's not just about building the tools.
Right.
It's about creating a whole ecosystem
A whole ecosystem.
where everyone can benefit.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's where that principle of global collaboration comes in again.
Right.
We need these international organizations, governments, tech companies,
All working together.
all working together to make sure that these AI-powered justice tools are available and accessible to everyone,
To everyone.
regardless of location.
Or socioeconomic status.
Right, so achieving justice without borders
Yeah.
requires this multi-pronged approach.
A multi-pronged approach.
Addressing both the technical challenges of developing the AI itself,
Right.
and then also the social and economic barriers that prevent people from accessing justice.
Absolutely. But even if we overcome all of those hurdles,
Yeah.
there are still some fundamental challenges that we really need to grapple with.
Okay, let's talk about that.
The document highlights 3 key challenges.
Okay.
Resource gaps across countries,
Uh-huh.
the lack of universally agreed upon ethical frameworks,
Right.
and then the difficulty of establishing accountability for these AI systems. Yeah, those are some complex issues
They are complex.
that are going to require some really thoughtful solutions.
Very thoughtful.
So let's break those down one by one.
Okay.
What do you mean by resource gaps across countries?
Well, developing and deploying these AI systems,
Right.
it requires significant resources,
Okay.
expertise,
Uh-huh.
data, computing power, infrastructure.
Right.
These resources are not evenly distributed across the globe.
Okay.
A wealthy nation might have the capacity to create this sophisticated AI-powered justice system,
Right.
but a developing nation might struggle to even just get basic internet access to its citizens.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to AI for social good.
Definitely not.
Okay.
We need solutions that are tailored to the specific needs
Yeah.
and contexts of different countries and communities.
Right.
A justice AI system that works well in the United States,
Right.
might be completely inappropriate
Right.
for a country with a very different legal system or cultural norms.
It's like trying to export a legal system from one country to another.
Exactly.
It just doesn't translate well.
It doesn't translate well, and that leads us right into that second challenge.
Okay.
This lack of universally agreed upon ethical frameworks, justice, is this really complex concept.
It is.
That's shaped by culture, history, values.
Uh-huh.
What's considered fair and just in one society might be seen as totally unacceptable in another.
So how do we create ethical guidelines for AI in justice systems?
That's the big question.
When there's so much diversity in how different cultures define justice.
It's a great question. It's going to require a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
And collaboration between experts from different disciplines
Okay.
and cultural backgrounds.
Right.
It won't be easy to find that common ground,
For sure.
but it's absolutely essential if we want to create AI systems that are truly ethical
Right.
and just on a global scale.
I can see how that would be a very delicate process, navigating all those cultural differences.
It will be.
But let's say we do actually manage to agree
Okay.
on some basic ethical principles.
Uh-huh.
How do we ensure that AI systems are actually adhering to those principles?
Right.
That brings us to that third challenge you mentioned.
Yes.
The difficulty of establishing accountability.
Yeah, this is where things get tricky.
Okay.
AI systems are complex, and their decision-making processes, they can be opaque.
Okay.
It can be difficult to determine why an AI system made a particular decision.
Right.
And even harder to actually assign blame when something goes wrong.
It's like trying to hold a shadow accountable.
Right.
How do you begin to address that?
Well, one approach is to really focus on transparency.
Okay.
The more we understand about how these systems work,
Yeah.
the better equipped we'll be to identify potential biases or errors.
Okay.
And we need to develop mechanisms for auditing these systems,
Right.
both during their development
Okay.
and after they've been deployed.
So it's about building in safeguards from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then having that ongoing oversight to make sure things are actually working the way they're supposed to.
Exactly. And when things do go wrong,
Yeah.
we need these clear lines of accountability.
Okay.
Who is responsible when an AI system makes a mistake?
Right.
That harms someone.
Yeah.
Is it the developer who created the algorithm?
Right.
The company that deployed it?
Uh-huh.
The government agency that's actually using it?
Those are tough questions.
They're tough questions.
It's like a legal and ethical maze.
It is a maze, and there aren't easy answers.
Right.
But these are conversations that we need to be having right now as AI just becomes more prevalent
Right.
in our justice systems.
We can't wait until it's too late.
We can't wait. We need to be thinking about these issues proactively
Yeah.
rather than waiting for something to go wrong.
Right. And then trying to scramble for solutions.
Exactly.
It sounds like there's a lot of work to be done,
A lot of work.
both in terms of refining the technology itself
Yes.
and in developing the ethical and legal
The
frameworks
frameworks.
to guide its use.
Yeah.
But despite all of these challenges, it seems like there's still this sense of optimism
There
in the
is.
document, right?
Yes.
This belief that AI can ultimately help create a more just world.
I think that optimism comes from recognizing that AI has this potential to address some of the most deeply ingrained problems in our justice systems,
Yeah,
problems that have been around for generations.
right.
We have a real chance here
They
to
do.
create a system that is truly fair
Yeah.
and
A
equitable.
system that upholds the rights and dignity of all individuals.
Yes, exactly.
It's like we're standing at a crossroads
Uh-huh.
with the opportunity to choose a path toward a brighter future.
We have a choice to make.
Yeah,
That path won't be easy, though.
right.
It's going to require vision,
Uh-huh.
courage,
Yeah,
and a willingness to challenge that status quo.
we have to be bold.
We have to be bold in our aspirations.
Yes.
While also remaining grounded in the realities of what's possible.
Right.
And we need to be constantly questioning,
Uh-huh.
testing our
And
prudence.
always striving to do better.
So it's not just about developing the technology.
Right.
It's also about having the wisdom to use it responsibly.
And ethically, and
That's
that
the
wisdom
thing.
it comes from understanding
Right.
the complexities of the human experience,
For sure.
the nuances of justice,
Mm-hmm.
and the potential consequences of our actions.
Right. We need to approach AI with a sense of humility,
Humility.
recognizing that it's this powerful tool that can be used for good or for bad.
Exactly.
And it's like we said at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
AI is a double-edged sword,
It is.
and it's really up to us to decide how we wield it.
That's right.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the potential of AI to totally revolutionize access to justice,
Right.
to those very real risks of bias.
Uh-huh. And those big challenges of creating a global framework for ethical AI development.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
It's clear that this technology is rapidly evolving.
It is.
And its impact on our legal systems, it's only going to grow
Oh, yeah, for
in
sure.
the coming years.
It's an exciting time
It is.
to be thinking about these issues.
Yeah.
We're at this pivotal moment
Mhm.
where the choices we make today are really going to shape the future of justice.
Yeah, for generations to come.
And that brings me to something I've been kind of pondering, throughout
Yeah.
our conversation.
Yeah.
What role do individuals like our listener play in all of this?
It's easy to feel like these are massive,
Yeah.
complex issues that are just totally beyond our control.
Yeah.
But as we've been discussing, AI development, it's not happening in some vacuum, right?
It's not.
It's shaped by the values
Right.
and the priorities of the people who create and deploy these systems.
Absolutely.
Which means that we, as individuals,
Yes,
we have a responsibility to engage with these issues,
we do.
to ask those tough questions,
Yeah.
and to demand that AI is used in a way that benefits, all of humanity.
100%. We can't just passively accept whatever technological solutions are presented to us.
Yeah.
We need to be informed, critical thinker.
We need to be able to discern those potential benefits and risks
Yes.
of AI.
And we need to be vocal advocates for the kind of future that we want to see.
So what can our listener actually do,
Yeah, what can they do?
practically speaking, to actually make a difference in this space?
Right, because it can feel daunting
Yeah, it can.
to know where to even begin.
Yeah?
A great first step is honestly just to stay informed.
Okay.
Read articles,
Uh-huh.
listen to podcasts like this one,
Right?
engage in those conversations about AI and its impact on society.
Right.
The more you understand about these issues, the better equipped you'll be
Yeah.
to participate in the debate and
Right.
to make informed choices.
And even of informed choices, you mentioned earlier some resources that we'd share.
Oh, yeah,
Those are a great place to start.
definitely.
We'll be sure to include links to some valuable resources in the show notes for this episode.
Perfect.
But it's not just about, acquiring knowledge.
Right.
It's also about actually putting that knowledge into action.
Exactly. There are so many ways to get involved.
All right.
You can support organizations
Yeah.
that are working to promote ethical AI development.
Right,
You can contact your elected officials,
right.
urge them to prioritize these issues.
Yeah,
Even something as simple as just having conversations with your friends and family
Yeah.
about AI and its implications
Right.
can help raise awareness
Yeah.
and spark that critical thinking.
those everyday conversations
Yeah.
can be super powerful.
They can.
They challenge assumptions, right? They shift perspectives,
Yeah,
and they inspire people to take action.
that's right.
It's this reminder that we're not just like these passive consumers of technology.
Right.
We have a voice,
We do.
and we can actually use it to shape the future.
100%. And don't underestimate the power of your individual choices.
Okay.
As consumers,
Yeah.
we have a say in which companies we support
Hmm.
and which products we use,
Right.
we can choose to invest in those companies
Right.
that are committed to ethical AI development.
Yeah.
And we can demand that transparency and accountability
Right.
from the companies we do business with.
It's a reminder that even small actions can have a ripple effect
They can.
by making those conscious choices in our everyday lives.
Yes.
We can send a message
Yeah.
that we care about these issues
Exactly.
and that we demand better
We demand better.
from the companies that are shaping our technological future.
That's right. And as we kind of wrap up here, I want to bring us back to that vision of justice without borders.
Yeah,
It's a bold and
Yes.
ambitious goal,
it is,
but it's one that's absolutely worth striving for.
right?
And while it may seem far off,
Yeah.
I believe that by working together,
Okay.
by embracing those principles we've talked about today,
Uh-huh.
and by demanding better for ourselves
Right.
and from those companies and institutions
Yeah.
that are wielding these powerful technologies,
Uh-huh.
we can create a world where justice is truly accessible to all.
It's been such a thought-provoking conversation.
It has been.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive
Thanks for having me.
into AI for social good and justice systems.
It's been great.
We hope you found it informative, engaging, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
I hope so.
And remember, this conversation doesn't end here.
It doesn't.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a future where technology serves humanity,
Yes.
not the other way around.
Well said.
Thank you for